Let's talk about gauge. What is gauge? Gauge is how many stitches per inch you knit at. You need to know this in order to do a fitted garment or something of a particular size. You need to measure over 4 inches. So in this case, the gauge swatch is about 6 inches wide. So we've just knit this little swatch in order to calculate the gauge. And here's a little gauge check. These are easy to come by and very handy to have in your knitting bag, pretty much essential. Now there's a little window here for calculating your gauge, which is intended for calculating your gauge. I don't recommend using it. I recommend counting over 4 inches, but I'll show you what it looks like to use it to explain gauge. We're going to count the little V's with each V is a stitch. So counting over 2 inches, we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stitches over 2 inches. Divide that by 2 and you have 4.5 stitches per inch in this sample of knitting. Now, this is tempting to use this cute little window, but it's so easy to get off by even a half of stitch using this window. And a half a stitch when you're talking about 40-inch sweater and 200 stitches in a sweater, that's 4 inches if you're off by half a stitch. So we want to go for the most accurate reading for our gauge. And to do that, we're going to measure over 4 inches. Note the starting point between 2 stitches right at 0 and mark that. And then note the end point right at 4 inches and mark that. And then count over 4 inches each V or stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I still have 4.5 stitches to the inch, and if that's what I'm going for, great. Now, what if I was wanting 5 stitches to the inch? What do we do then? Well, first of all, condolences if you just knit this beautiful swatch and now you have to start over. It's always hard. But the good news is there is a rule of thumb, which is, at least I find it fairly accurate. See if this works for you. If you change one needle size, very often that will mean half a stitch difference in your gauge per inch. So, if I was thoroughly sick of knitting gauge swatches, I might and I was only if I was a half stitch off, maybe I'd risk it, and just change my needles by 1 size and see how that works in the knitting. So for instance, say I knit this swatch on size 8 needles and I got 4.5 stitches to the inch and I want to get 5 stitches to the inch. I'm going to go down 1 needle size to size 7 needles for smaller needles for a tighter gauge of 5 stitches to the inch. Okay, so there you have it. I think we've pretty much covered it. See how this works for you. May your gauge be consistent. May your tension be consistent and your gauge swatches be useful. Happy knitting.